It was supposed to be an ordinary Sunday at my grandmother's house, but the moment I opened that dusty old box in her closet, my whole world turned upside down. What I found inside changed everything and revealed a secret my family had buried for decades. It was an ordinary Sunday afternoon. My mother and I were helping my grandmother clean out her bedroom, laughing and sorting through old clothes and junk, when I saw it. It was a small wooden box hidden in the corner of her closet under a dusty blanket. It didn't look like anything special, just an ordinary box, old and scratched, with a rusty lock. "Grandma, what is this?" I asked, lifting the box. She froze for a moment. Then she shrugged with a forced smile. "Just some old memories, honey, nothing important." But the way her hands were shaking told me something else. I felt she was hiding something. I should have left it where it was. I should have put it back where I found it and moved on, but I couldn't. That night, after everyone went to bed, I snuck into my grandmother's room and opened the box. When I opened it, everything seemed normal. There were letters inside. Many letters, carefully tied with a red ribbon. The paper was yellowed and the ink faded, but I could still read the writing. At first they seemed innocent. Maybe they were love letters, I thought, but as I kept reading, my heart began to race. These letters were not written by my grandfather. They were written to him from a woman I didn't know. And they were not romantic. They were desperate. They were desperate pleas. "I can't keep this secret any longer," one of them said. "It's killing me inside." Another said, "You promised you'd take care of it. If you don't, I will." Another letter said, "I can't take it anymore. You have to help me to come out." It was like a punch in the stomach. Who was this woman? What was this secret? And why had my grandmother kept these letters for so many years? As I read the letters, tears involuntarily began to flow from my eyes. The next morning, I asked my grandmother for an answer. I didn't want to upset her, but I needed an answer, because I couldn't sleep that night and I felt terrible. At first, she denied everything. She said the letters were from a troubled friend and meant nothing. But when I showed her the last letter, "I can't let her grow up not knowing the truth," she burst into tears. Trembling, she told me everything. Years ago, before she married my grandfather, he had an affair with another woman. She had gotten pregnant, but he refused to let her go. She had threatened to tell everyone, but before she could, she had suddenly disappeared. "They said it was an accident," my grandmother whispered, "but I always wondered." I couldn't breathe. Could what he was implying really be true? "I don't know what he did," she said, "but I knew. Deep down, I always knew." I froze when he said that, and I made a promise to myself that I would do everything I could to find out the truth. My mother and I began to investigate who the woman was. Her name was Margaret. She had been reported missing, but the case had never been solved. No body was ever found, no evidence. She had just disappeared. We looked in old newspapers, went through archives, even went to the police station. But the more we searched, the more questions we were left with. Finally, we found it. Her death certificate. It was issued in the same year. Cause of death, accidental drowning. But there was a problem. The place listed on the certificate was miles away from where she was last seen. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why had my grandmother panicked when I found the box? Grandpa's hastily organized funeral, the way he never talked about his past. These were the voices in my head, shouting and whispering. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth slapped me in the face. In the end, we found no evidence, no confession, no accusation, only whispers and shadows. My grandmother passed away a few months later and took everything she knew to her grave. After my grandmother's death, we continued to investigate the case. We went back to the police station. We asked questions of my grandmother's old neighbors, but we got nowhere. The worst part was that Margaret had no family, and as a result, there was no one to question her death. No matter how hard we tried, we were getting nothing. After that, I deleted my social media accounts. I stopped sharing where I was, what I was doing, or who I was with, because if there's one thing I learned from that box, it's that some secrets have to stay buried, and sometimes even those closest to us were the people we knew the least. But the nightmares didn't end. I still think about the letters and Margaret and what might have happened that night. And sometimes I wonder, Would it have been better if we had never found that box? Maybe it would have been, but I can't ignore what happened now, and I can never forget.